They say when a baby is born, so is a mother. But while you are there to help your baby grow into the person he or she is meant to be, who is there to help you? Many women feel lost and alone when they become mothers, wondering, who am I now? Sometimes it feels like the transformation from woman to mother is as radical as a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Did you know that inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar literally turns into goop before it rearranges itself into a butterfly? This podcast is about the goop, what soul transformation looks like as you transition from being a woman to a mom. Your baby's growth matters, but yours does too. You're not alone. I'm your host, Brittany Ming. Welcome to the Motherhood Metamorphosis.
Welcome everyone to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I am your host, Brittany Ming, and today we are talking to Amy Cirksena. Amy is a stay-at-home mom of two boys, aged 4 and 2, and she lives in Maryland. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So you and I emailed back and forth a few times, and you told me that one of the topics that was close to your heart was the transition from being a working mom to a stay-at-home mom. And I really wanted to talk about that because it was actually that conversation that launched the idea for this podcast with my friends about a year and a half ago, because we were just talking about what a huge transition that is, how it just, I don't know, I feel like that transition is one that a lot of women struggle with, and it feels like you're in the goop.
Sure. My transition from being a working woman to a stay-at-home mom was kind of, I kind of fell into it, but I also at the same time, it was a very conscious decision. I was pregnant with my oldest son, who was born in 2017. And I had been working with a company in Washington, D.C., and I had been with them for about 4 or 5 years. And it was a family-owned business, and I was an event coordinator, and I had, spent the past like almost decade kind of working in events and in that field and kind of finding my niche. And I got pregnant, and everyone was ecstatic and we were all happy. And I had the ability to have a remote kind of workplace, and I could go do virtual work. And I could also, they were like, bring the baby in. So I'm like, all right, for at least a little bit, I won't have to worry too much about like childcare. I have some flexibility. About 3 weeks before my scheduled C-section, they pulled me into the office and they go, we're closing the business down in the next month and a half. My maternity leave was starting in the beginning of June, and they were closing down in like July, like early July. And I was sitting there, I'm like, okay, great. So not only am I losing my paid maternity leave, I'm all of a sudden on unemployment. And
oh my gosh, that's crazy.
So initially I was thinking, okay, I'll just take the time spent with my baby and then start looking for another job, and I'll go back into it. And I had my son, and that was kind of what happened for a little bit. I kind of started looking for jobs. And as I was looking for jobs, I was like, this is ridiculous. The cost of childcare, I'm not going to be able to, like, I either have to make more money or stay home because I will be just working to pay for someone to take care of my child. And so my husband and I kind of worked it out a little bit. And I did go back a little bit part-time, just to supplement some income. And then when I got pregnant with my second son, I was like, I can't do it. We could not afford childcare based on what I was making. Like, I'd just be working to pay for someone to raise our kids. So after putting thought into it, was kind of like, all right, I will pause my career. I will pause what I'm doing, and I will focus on our family. And that's just kind of what we're going to have to do. And in the end, I really was okay with that decision. Of course, you kind of walk into being a stay-at-home mom thinking things, and then they go completely differently. So.
Yeah, tell me about what your expectations were and then how things actually worked out.
I went into it kind of hearing stories like, it's being a stay-at-home mom is hard and it's difficult. And I think, going in as a mom, like a new mom, I was like, I got this. It's fine. It's fine. It'll be fine. I have a college degree. I'm a smart person. I can handle children. It's just like, for some reason, and I don't know, like there's almost like a stigma that we just sit at home all day and like eat cookies and crackers. And I'm like, why is it taking me 12 hours to do a load of laundry? Like it's busy, but it's just a different type of busy than like working in an office per se, where you can, step away and have lunch for a minute with a coworker. And you're just always on, and someone's always, meeting you. And there are definitely days where I would love to be working in an office where I do not have to hear the word mom like for like 5 minutes. It's just always kind of having that like mom anxiety, always on and always going, is probably the most challenging thing. And I wish more people would understand. I think that we do, like being a stay-at-home mom, you're not just like, I don't know where the time goes, but we're not just sitting around like eating cookies and watching TV.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I am a stay-at-home mom right now, and I have 5 kids. My 4 older boys are in school, so I have 14-year-old twins, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. So they're all in school, but I am home with my 2-year-old. And today I was just really tired this week, and today I was just kind of following her around the house, thinking like, I'm so tired, and I only have one kid at home right now, but all the other kids' stuff is still in my brain. That's what's always going on in my brain. So I think the mental exhaustion of being a stay-at-home mom, really, it's not even a stay-at-home mom, it's just a mom in general, because if you were at work, you'd still be thinking about your kids. So I think that's what's really hard, is that mental load that people are just beginning to talk about, of women in our culture, of being a mom. And if you're a stay-at-home mom, you still have that mental load on you.
And I think I kind of despise when people tell me it's like, oh, it's just the season you're in right now. The kids are little. I'm like, I don't think it's gonna, like, because I've noticed changes as they've grown, especially from like when they were newborns. I felt, I don't want to say more comfortable, but it was just easier because they would sleep, and you just kind of feed them and they sleep, and you get a little bit of things done. And then all of a sudden they're wandering around the house and fighting with each other. And my 2-year-old is climbing on the cabinet top, like climbing up on countertops, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, just, so it really is constant. And then I think there's a lot of, I struggled with a lot of guilt, just because like I would see my friends who were working full time and have children, and I'm like, well, why can't I do that too? Like, you're doing it. Every situation is different, and for ours it was financial. But I'm just looking at them, I'm like, well, she's managing to do it. Like, she's making it look easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that can be really hard, and it really like messes with your head. That inner battle is so hard as a stay-at-home mom, because for one, you're alone. And so your thoughts are the only thing that are that's keeping you company. And that narrative in your head can be so demoralizing if you are seeing what the other people are doing, and realizing like, okay, if she can do it, I should be able to do it. But sometimes it's hard to look at your own capabilities at the moment, or even your own financial situation, and say, these are the limitations that are in my life. And if I'm constantly pushing against those limitations, I'm going to be exhausted, or I'm going to be not the best version of myself. And I think realizing what that is the really difficult part. Like, that's the journey, is figuring out like, what does the best version of myself look like as a stay-at-home mom, or as I'm choosing to be at home. Because sometimes like you kind of didn't have a choice, but then you did choose. So that was
Right.
interesting that you said that, because sometimes people do have that choice, and they be like, I'm going to choose to be a stay-at-home mom, this is my choice, and it's hard, it's still hard, and they think, but I chose this. And sometimes you don't have a choice, and I think that can also really be difficult, because you feel like something was stripped away from you, and you've lost something in your life. Did you have that, like a lost feeling?
I did, and I will say I still kind of do,
Mhm.
because I mean, I did go to school, and there was, I got my degree, and I did work for my, work towards my career goals. And for a while I never like pictured myself having children, so it was very career focused. And then we had kids, and I was like, oh well. But I find that the farther I get along, kind of like as my kids get older, and the farther I get into kind of the motherhood journey, I have become more confident with that decision, but people, like other people, have a tendency to bring it up and almost try and guilt trip me a little bit. Like I've had friends recently, I've kind of gotten back in touch with a few people, and they're like, "So what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom. My kids are 4 and 2." And they're like, "Oh, you're so smart. What are you doing? Are you going to go back to work soon?" And I'm like, "But what's wrong with me raising my children? Like, what's wrong with me kind of just embracing them and enjoying them while they're little?" Like, so that, and other family members who are less comfortable with the stay-at-home mom, because I was raised by a single mom, and she's working and she was a hard worker, and I feel like almost it's like kind of just demoralizing a little bit when you're like, "Oh, you're just staying home with your kids?"
Yeah, that statement, but you're so smart. It's like if I choose this role, I'm choosing to make myself less in the world.
Exactly.
I feel that. I feel that for you because I have my undergrad and my master's degree, and I went back to school when my twins were babies, and they graduated when they were 3, and then I did work for a while, and I did choose to stop working, but it also felt like not a choice too, because my son was diagnosed with autism when he was about 7, and suddenly I was working and I had 4 kids, and then I had like 4 therapy appointments a week. So that was like putting a whole nother part-time job on my life and my time commitments. And I was trying to find babysitters for my other children and still continue to work. And I realized I cannot do all of this and be mentally healthy. And I was not mentally healthy at all. I was like very depressed. And I was like, I'm falling apart. And if I'm going to be there for my kids, I need to stop working. So I chose, but it was like my life chose for me too. So that was really tough. And I just had a conversation with my husband yesterday about leadership, and he's in a very significant leadership role in his work. And I was telling him, I said, I feel like a lot of times I still have a lot to offer to the world. And it's hard because in my life at this moment, I'm not able to exercise those gifts. So tell me what I see you nodding because we're on Zoom right now. So tell me how that resonates with you in your life.
It is one of those, and again, it goes back to just having such a big kind of like a mental load. Like if somebody asked me like, "What do you want to do?" I would love to go back to school. I would love to write more. I would love to do so many things because again, I know I'm capable, and I don't want to put myself down in any way and be like, "Oh, yes, I'm smart, but I'm just staying at home." And there is things I like have to say and things I'm passionate about, but it's the time factor. There's for there's just not enough hours in the day with and I know it is the season, and my kids are at an age where they are very, they're not in school, so they're very dependent on me. Yeah, like you said, I have things to say and there's stuff I want to contribute, and it's just there is an issue with the time. I know it's just not the right time.
I think that you saying that and us just having this conversation is just going to resonate with a lot of women who say, I know who I am or I know who I was. And in this time period, I'm feeling that I want to move forward or I want to do something different. But at the same time, I want to give myself to my kids. And I think those two things can feel like tension in ourselves, almost like two magnets that the polar ends are put together, and then there's like that invisible force that's just like swirling inside of us, that this tension. And I think that it's important to talk about that, because if we ignore it, or if we lean too far into losing ourselves in motherhood, if we forget who we are and our passions and what we want to do, or if we lean too far into those voices that say, but you're so smart, you know? And I think if we just look at that tension and say, this tension is here, and I am able and capable to deal with that tension in my life until I have more space, whatever that means, mental space, physical space, or the kids going to school, or having more help at home, like a sitter or things like that. That tension is going to exist. And we can't always change it, but I think we can acknowledge it. And I think acknowledging it can help us deal with the pain of that tension, because it is like in my life, it has manifested itself as a deep pain when you want something, but you have made a choice to be at home or be in this season with small children.
Yeah, exactly. And it is hard. And I find that like I'm dealing like a little bit better with it now, but you're right. It's very easy to lean one way or the other with those tensions.
Let me ask you a question, like one of the questions that we had discussed. So when did you start to feel like you again? And how did you know?
I would say probably after my younger son, when he was about 1. So it's probably been this past year. I've started to really, because I would say I was probably in a bit of a depression for a while, just with like having 2 kids and adjusting and kind of getting sucked into just being a mom and only seeing myself as a mom. So I would say this past year, I really kind of stepped out, become more confident in being a mom, and then separating my mom and my motherhood from who I like myself as an individual. Like I'm not just a mom, and it's taken a lot. Like and as cliche as it sounds, I have to do like really focus on that self-care and really find little projects that I'm passionate about and really try and carve out that time for myself just to keep the separation and just to remind myself that, I love my kids, but they do not necessarily define me as a person. I've had to kind of reignite some like joy into my life. Not that they, you know, it's just when you give so much, and that's what motherhood kind of is. It's just you give so much, and there are so many people with opinions, and you're trying to find a balance to everything. That's so much joy was kind of sucked out there for a while, and I feel probably within the past year, it's really I've had to work on it, but it's I'm kind of finding me again in like a new and better version of myself, just through growth and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. As I've talked to so many people and as I've just analyzed like my own story, I see this pattern with women and motherhood. Like you have a baby or you have your second baby, and you do feel like you just get swallowed up in caregiving. And I think it's just because those new like the new baby, like it just demands so much of you. And I think learning something new demands so much too, of like your body and your soul and your mind. You're just like, you feel swallowed up. And then you feel like you're sinking down, 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 down. And you're like, it feels overwhelming. And then there's almost like this, I need to rise up again. So it's like you sink down and then you're like, okay, I need air. I need to breathe as a person, as like not just a caregiver. And then you rise up. And I think that pattern can happen over and over again if we're going to use that like metaphor. And maybe that's just a pattern that women go through in life, like where we have this, where we get kind of swallowed up and then we rise back up. And then maybe we get better about realizing when we're sinking and we're like, nope, I have to rise above this again so that I can feel like myself and not only a caregiver or somebody who's completely swallowed up in somebody else's needs. Because I think that is where depression comes in, because you mentioned that in your own story. And I have that in my own story too.
Definitely. And I agree with you that I would say it probably is a pattern that women go through. And it's just, I agree. We probably do get better at realizing what to kind of prioritize and how to prioritize ourselves so we can keep growing and just becoming better people.
I think it can be especially hard when you have a career and then you stay at home. For me, I've thought a lot about how when you're at work, you have outside validation, like you have coworkers coming by. For me, I had my students or I had my supervisors telling me like, hey, great lecture today, or like, you're really doing a great job, or you have feedback, or you have like tangible goals that you meet every day and like a checklist that you can see, this is what I got done today. And when you're at home, it's like this cyclical thing where you do one thing and then you have to do it again and again and again. Like you put a new diaper on, you're like, oh great. And then they poop immediately. And you're just like never done. So, or you clean the house, which is not being a mom. Like being a housekeeper is not the same thing as being a mother, but your tasks are combined. But if you are trying to keep up your house, so you can have a clean environment for your kids to be in and for you to be in, and then like they mess it up immediately. Like you mop the floor and somebody spills Kool-Aid. Like that's just the cycle.
I feel like it's easy to kind of get sucked into that cycle too. And that's where I struggled for a while, is where it was just like, oh my gosh, it's the same thing again tomorrow. Like I'm going to wake up and we're going to do the same thing, eat breakfast, do our play date, have lunch and have dinner, and it's bath time. It's the same thing every day. And that's what I miss, I think, about working, is kind of just the change in routine, and like you said, kind of having tangible goals and projects. And I struggle with a lot of guilt too, just because of the lost income. Like we made it work with my husband's salary, but at the same time, somehow like me bringing in monetary value made me feel like a bigger part of the relationship, and taking that away somehow made me feel less, and not being able to contribute financially. Like now I'm folding laundry and doing dishes more, and which again I was doing before, but now it's kind of just, there's probably more emphasis on it, I guess, and I'm taking care of kids, but that somehow doesn't stack up to me bringing home a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Type of thing. So that mentality was something I also had to kind of like rewrite in my head a little bit, and being like, no, I'm taking care of our children. Like they are a huge priority. This is enough. I'm doing enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important to bring up, the financial thing. Like my husband is he's in the military, so he has a salary from the military. He also does soccer reffing on the side, and he told me, he was adding up some tally, he's like, I made $275 at that tournament last weekend. I'm like, that's awesome. And I was like, I made $50 this month from my Etsy shop. And he's like, apples and oranges, hun. And I'm like, I know. But we had that exact conversation because I was like, it's just hard for me sometimes because I want to feel like I contribute more. And I think that's also that I always, that's a tension within me that I have to recognize, because if I get too in my head about it, I feel really down about myself and my contributions to the world, or my contributions to our family unit and to our children, because yeah, that can be really tough. But here's another example. I am the one who communicates with the teachers because he's working full time. And I said, Miss Hampton emailed blah, 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 blah. This is what's going on with Eli. And he's like, who's Miss Hampton? And I'm like, it's our son's first grade teacher. How do you not know the teachers' names? We had a conversation about it and I was a little annoyed, but I was thinking, that's what I'm keeping track of. Like, we have our lanes and we're both really good at it. At this moment, like your husband, he's doing the financial contribution and you are doing the like nurturing and home contribution. And our society just devalues that so much. Like your friends saying, but you're so smart, why aren't you doing something with that? So that's our culture speaking into this issue. And I think it can be so hard when those outside voices just devalue and undermine what a mother's role in her family or in society.
And I feel like so much of just motherhood in general is it's almost like the essence of motherhood is just dealing with the outside voices and the outside opinions and trying to block them out.
Yeah.
And just maintain your own confidence and maintain your own story. And remember, again, this is cliche, but like every family is so different and every dynamic is different. So the way you parent and the way you embrace your motherhood is going to be different than the person next to you.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things, like one size doesn't fit all. And yeah, our society just doesn't, for some reason, doesn't work well within that narrative.
Yeah. I think it's because visible work is so much easier to reward, either with money or with a high five, be that metaphorical or physical. But invisible work, which is really the work of motherhood, is so easy to dismiss as something like, or just complete, like you don't see it and you can't reward it. Because how can you reward like being up with your child 3 times in the night because they wet their bed, had a bad dream, and like couldn't fall back asleep. But a mother like reassuring her child and being that presence that's there for that child is making sure that child grows up to be secure and attached and mentally healthy so that they can form their own attachments later in life and contribute to society as like a mentally well person. Like that is the bigger picture of like those small moments that are so invisible. So that's hard to wrap your head around when your work is just completely invisible and you're exhausted. What you said just a minute ago about silencing the voices of society. And then I remember back when you said, I started to become more confident in who I was as a mom, like after your second son was born. And that I had this image in my mind of silencing the voices of society by making your own voice louder in your life.
Yep.
And I think maybe that's how we can balance that tension more, because we can get out of balance when the voices scream too loud from society and our own voice is so small, or we purposely diminish it. Maybe that's how like we deal with that tension. And I think by having these types of conversations, it can help, because like I said, when you're a stay-at-home mom, you're just by yourself all the time. Or I tell my husband, you're the only adult I talk to.
I tell mine that all the time. He'll come home tired from work and I'm like, no, we need to talk. I need to have adult conversation.
Yes.
Please talk to me.
Yes. Or we've had this conversation lately. My husband likes to, I cook and I do like to cook and I like to say I'm a pretty good cook, but he likes to pick at me. He'll say things like, the soup is very carroty. And I'm like, I always put carrots in this soup. And I've just been sensitive about it lately because the kids complain a lot about food. And I'm like, you have to remember this is like, I'm not talking to any other adults during the day. Like you are the only person I'm really talking to. And what you say matters. So even if you're just like picking at me a little bit about the soup being too carroty, like I need you to just tell me like, thank you for making dinner.
Please just say thank you.
Just say thank you. Like, thanks for making food for me to eat. So yeah, I think it's realizing those things too, because I think it is really easy to get torn down, and we're the person tearing ourselves down the most.
And for anyone who like struggles with like self-confidence, it is so hard to kind of just rebound and be like, no, I'm doing the right thing. I'm feeling good about yourself, especially when you're like, again, not talking to anyone throughout the day or looped in a cycle where you're just like cleaning, cooking, kids to bed, wake up, cleaning, cooking, kids to bed. So yeah, but it is very important. And I think more stay-at-home moms need to know, just kind of hold on to that confidence. Don't cling to the guilt. Don't cling to the regret. Just build your confidence.
Yeah. Maybe that's like the real work every day as a woman who is also a stay-at-home mom, is keeping yourself mentally aware and mentally healthy. Because I think the default so many times is like negativity in our own minds, or tearing ourselves down, or letting those other voices be too loud. So like thinking today, my voice, I'm going to speak up, even if it's just speaking into my own heart. What I do is important. I'm contributing to society by raising a child who's whole and healthy and well, emotionally, physically, mentally. And I'm smart and I'm capable and worthy. And what I do is important and matters. So, and I have to tell myself that too, because it's so easy to devalue what I do. And from what you've said, that's a battle that you deal with as well.
The transition was really just one that I wish more people would talk about, just because it is so, as much as you think you're ready for it, there's just something about that transition where it just brings so much, and there's just so many layers, and you're just like overwhelmed, and it is just shocking, no matter how ready you think you are.
It's like when someone's like, make sure you keep sleep now because you're not going to sleep after the baby. I'm like, you can't store sleep. Like it doesn't work that way. Like even if you think you know like how tired you're going to be,
Worst advice.
Yeah, you just can't. You can't prepare. You're just going to jump in, and there is that sinking down, but there's also rising up.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, I would tell moms who are stay-at-home moms, if you're struggling, like look up, like rise up, let your voice speak louder inside your head, your own voice about who you are. and you're going to find yourself again. Like, you're going to be yourself. And it's okay to choose something different for yourself or from what society is telling you.
Yeah. And well, that's the thing if I could pick something that like I really appreciate about staying at home, is that I kind of realized that if I would have stayed in my career, because I became a mother and because I kind of was inevitably going to change as a person, my career goals would have changed anyway. And this is kind of something that I find really comforting. It's just like I was going to need to either change my career, alter the path, or just refocus my goals, because all of a sudden I had my children, and they, as much as I love my career, like my children matter more. So I would have to bend and kind of wiggle my way into something else that would fit better with our family. And it just so happened that like me working from home is where I landed right now. But I know if I would have stayed in my career, I would have had to change and alter things anyway. Thinking things being a little more fluid instead of, so stagnant, it does make it a little easier, I think, which is comforting.
Yeah, that is. I mean, really, there's the cliche of like the only constant is change. And thinking like, oh, this was my past, this is who I was in the past, and this is who I am now. And that's tough. But like, even if things would have changed, like the job would have changed, the goals would have changed, like the people, your coworkers come and go. Like, change is constant. So, and especially when you are a mom, there's no, except for your day to day life, get up and clean up and change diapers. That's always the same. It will never change. So, what would you tell another woman who's walking the same transition you have, like who's in the goop, who is in that transition, who's not feeling like herself and wondering, like, what the hell just happened? Who am I now? What should I do? What would you tell her?
It is important to kind of, this is going to sound cliche too, I think find a group of friends, moms, someone to kind of have your back, who aren't going to be the people that are like, well, you're so smart, what are you doing? Like, because when you're in the goop, like it is really easy to be like just falling further down if you have kind of those voices and the negativity coming at you. So find your little cluster of safe people and your besties and cling tight. And also just remember to like let go a little bit of the guilt and the regret, because nothing is really going to go according to your plans. I feel like there's always so much coming at you. And if you can let go of that a little bit and just be confident in your decision and confident in knowing that everyone else doesn't have a clue what they're doing either. So don't listen to the opinions, don't listen to those other voices. Just stay true to yourself and you will find yourself again. I promise.
And I think it's trusting in that process. Because sometimes we think, oh, myself is completely gone. But like, no, like you're still in there. Like who you are is true. Like your heart is still true, even if it's changing. So yeah, you'll find yourself again. I like that. All right. This was a great conversation. I'm really glad we could talk about this.
This was so helpful for me, even.
But I'm really glad. And it's helpful for me. I think that sometimes we don't talk about this at length. I think maybe we talk about why we say it's hard, but I think diving into like why it's hard and like peeling back those layers can help us understand this process more. And I think it's helped me even understand it more, even though I've been a stay-at-home mom for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good for me to think about these things too. So I'm glad. Thank you. Really glad we're having this conversation. So to end our time, I'll have these 10 rapid fire questions that I like to ask women. So they're just for fun. So are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Which Disney princess would you like to take out to coffee?
Rapunzel.
I love her too. In fact, I just bought my 2-year-old a little Rapunzel dress for Halloween.
The best one.
Yeah, she's great. What's one thing you must have on your nightstand?
A glass of water.
For sure. Yeah. What's your go-to treat after the kids go to bed?
Oh, I'm in trouble. Anything sweet, like anything we have around, cookies, chocolate, anything.
Yes, you gotta raid the pantry or the freezer. What is an ordinary moment that brings you great joy?
Just reading to my kids, I think. Just reading them any books and just having that time, that quality time.
Yeah, yeah, I like that too. I love it when my daughter's like super into the book and she'll like kind of read it with me if it's her favorite one. I'm like, oh, this is the best.
I love, like the book cuddle, something about reading and snuggling, and just it's the best.
It is. The last show you binged and loved.
Let's see. I just finished Nine Perfect Strangers. I wouldn't really say I binged it. I think the last one I binged and loved was probably Bridgerton.
I watched Bridgerton too when it came out. I think I watched it like immediately when it came out.
Right when it was like a year ago, almost probably beginning of the year.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I liked it too. It was definitely binge worthy. It was also very problematic. It made me think a lot. So
I know. I'm like, I'm overthinking this whole show.
I know. You're like, this is taking up a lot of my mental space. So I had some really good things to think about though. So even if they didn't address some of the very, very seriously problematic things with the show. Yeah.
There were some issues, but yeah.
Yeah. Same. We're on the same page. All right. If you run out of this besides milk, you have to go to the store.
Apples.
Apples? Are you
The 2-year-old obsessed with apples, and he's constantly running in the fridge like apple.
Who makes you laugh?
My sister.
Texting or talking?
Oh geez. I probably text more, but I enjoy like having an actual conversation with somebody, like talking more.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to?
Probably the holidays and just getting to see my family more, I think, since those are coming up.
Yeah. All right, last one. Finish this sentence. Motherhood is
exhausting, but incredibly beautiful.
I love that. 100% agree. All right, if you guys would like to follow Amy on social media, she writes about love, loss, and motherhood as a contributor for Her View from Home and Still Standing magazine. You can find her on Instagram at Amy_Cirksena. All right, Amy, thank you so much. I loved having our conversation today, and I really hope a lot of women resonate with it.
Me too. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Next, tell your friends. Podcasts are a slow growth type of social media, so promo works best when it's from person to person. If you know another mom who's in the goop right now, send her a text of encouragement and the link to the episode that is speaking to your heart right now. If you have a story about your own matrescence, the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition that occurs when someone becomes a mother, please leave a comment below. I want this channel to be a place where women can build community about the challenges and joys of their own motherhood metamorphosis. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope it encouraged you and gave you some good food for thought. If you ever have any questions, comments, or you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can email me at brittanyaming@gmail.com.
He was about 1 before I my son. Hold on, my child is. But yeah, it was.
Hang on, my doorbell just rang, and I don't really know why. I'm so sorry. I'll be right back.